Oh, God, is there anything more tedious than watching someone else play a video game? This is a review of the Star Trek Voyager episode Worst Case Scenario. If you have not seen this episode and you don't want to know how to beat final boss Seska, be warned. Spoilers beyond this point. Finally, an episode of Voyager that acknowledges the tension between the Starfleet and Maquis members of the crew. 3 years after the show pretty much dropped that bit entirely. But hey, better late than never. Right? We open on B'Elanna having a conversation with Chakotay. He catches up to her in the corridor on the way to a turbo lift and is like, how about that Tuvok? What a dick, huh? I guess. Speaking of which, want to do a mutiny with me? I've got all the Maquis plus a bunch of the Starfleet crew on my side. We could use someone like you. So right away we can tell something's a little off here. Not only is Chakotay's let's do a mutiny plan coming out of nowhere to anyone who watches the show regularly, the way he speaks to B'Elanna is strange, familiar, but generic, impersonal. They get to the bridge. Janeway is preparing to leave with Paris for an away mission. More weirdness, as Chakotay refers to this as the first time he's been left in command of the ship while the captain is away. Once Janeway is gone, Chakotay gives a signal to the rest of the crew and the mutiny is on. Tuvok gets shot. Harry puts up a bit of a fight, but B'Elanna shoots him. Chakotay's like, good on you for choosing the winning side. B'Elanna and Chakotay shoot their way through the corridors to the mess hall where some of the crew is gathered with Neelix, who immediately turns on them and joins Chakotay's mutiny. They pick up Seska along the way too. The real Seska has been dead for like a year at this point in the show, so now it's pretty obvious what we're looking at. Chakotay sends B'Elanna and Seska to round up more of the Starfleet crew. They do, and they herd everyone into a cargo bay, where Chakotay walks in to give them the join me or get the hell off the ship speech. They can either jump aboard Team Chakotay, where they'll do everything it takes to get the ship home as fast as possible, Starfleet ethics be damned, or they can take their chances on the next habitable planet. Before anyone makes any decisions, Tom Paris walks in like, B'Elanna, what are you doing? You blew off our lunch date to join a mutiny? I want to join a mutiny. And B'Elanna tells us what we already know and says, computer freeze program. This has all been a holodeck simulation. But, as she explains to Tom, the mystery is, who created it? She was cleaning out the computer database and found this holonovel about the Maquis trying to take over the ship. The file was encrypted, and the author's identity is unknown. They decide the best thing is to tell Captain Janeway about this mysterious program, but in order to give a full report, they figure they'd better get to the ending. So, they reset the program, and this time Tom plays through the scenario. His version runs pretty much the same as B'Elanna's until the betrayal on the bridge, when Tom gets cold feet about joining the mutineers and tries to warn Tuvok. Chakotay captures Tom and sends him to the brig with the rest of the Starfleet crew still loyal to Janeway. Eventually, Tom changes his mind and pledges his loyalty to Chakotay, but as he explains to B'Elanna in the mess hall later, by that time Chakotay was too suspicious of him to trust him with anything important, and he was assigned some menial task on the ship. Not much fun. While Tom and B'Elanna talk about the holonovel, Neelix joins them. It turns out he's played it too. Actually, despite the fact that they agreed to keep it a secret, it seems Tom and B'Elanna did tell one or two others about the holonovel, and now everyone on the ship knows about it. Tom plays the holonovel again, this time joining Chakotay's mutiny from the beginning. He gets to a scene on the bridge when Janeway and Paris, hologram Paris, who is a character in the program, return to Voyager in their shuttlecraft to find Chakotay out of uniform and in charge. After arguing for a minute, Chakotay destroys Janeway's shuttle, but Janeway and Holo Paris manage to beam aboard Voyager before they're killed. Chakotay and Tom race to the brig, where Janeway is trying to free the imprisoned crew. Chakotay shoots her, and Tom spins around to find himself face to face in a standoff with himself. And then the program ends. It turns out that's all there is. The holonovel isn't finished. B'Elanna tries again to figure out who wrote it, but still no luck. The holonovel comes up at the next senior staff meeting. Janeway wants to know who wrote it, and Tuvok fesses up. The thing is, He didn't intend for it to be an entertaining holo novel. He created it as a training program for security officers in the early days after Voyager was stranded in the Delta Quadrant, when he worried the new Maquis crew members might try to mutiny for real. But, Tuvok says, when it became obvious the series wasn't going in that direction, I abandoned the program, and I thought I deleted it. I do not know how anyone could have accessed it. I even emptied the recycle bin. I ran Recover. Tuvok worries the program might open old wounds between the Starfleet and Maquis factions of the crew, and suggests that the program be permanently deleted. But Tom wants to write an ending to the story. Janeway sides with Tom and encourages him to finish the holo novel. Despite his misgivings, Tuvok decides to become Tom's co-writer. They clash creatively, since Tom's process involves just making shit up as he goes along, while Tuvok insists that their story follow the dictates of poetics, which on Vulcan means that characters act logically, according to their established traits. Their argument carries on from the mess hall to the holodeck, where Tuvok opens up the program to allow them to begin making changes, and holodeck episode shit starts to happen. Suddenly, Tuvok and Tom find themselves in a holographic simulation of a cell in the brig, and holographic Seska is here. Only she's different than she was in the earlier scenes from the holo novel. She addresses Tuvok personally, and explains that she is a program created by the real Seska before she left the ship to get revenge on Tuvok for betraying the Maquis to Starfleet way back in the pilot episode. The holodeck has been sealed, and the safety protocols have been turned off. Outside the holodeck, Harry discovers that the transporters and communication systems have also just gone offline. So, Tuvok and Tom are stuck in the holodeck with no line to the outside. Holo Seska decides to be sporting and gives Tuvok and Tom a chance to run for it. They wind up in the transporter room with the holographic character of Janeway. Tuvok points out that if Seska altered the program, none of the characters in it can be trusted. He recommends trying to avoid interacting with the program and waiting until their friends outside the holodeck figure out how to rescue them. Then, Seska and Chakotay show up. Janeway tries to shoot them with a phaser rifle, but it's been set to overload, and Janeway is killed. Seska wings Tom with a phaser shot and tells them to get running again. After a quick visit to sickbay where the reprogrammed doctor character smacks them around and throws them out, Tom and Tuvok decide to try to avoid the rest of the characters by hiding in a maintenance tube. Meanwhile, outside the holodeck, Janeway, B'Elanna, and Harry discover that even though they can't shut down the program or restore the disabled systems, they can add things of their own to the program. So, when a fire starts in the maintenance tube where Tuvok and Tom are hiding, Janeway gives them a fire extinguisher. And when Tuvok and Tom find themselves cornered again, Janeway rewrites the Chakotay character to challenge Seska and stop her from killing Tuvok and Tom. So, Seska kills Chakotay. Rewrite one of my characters, will ya? Janeway adds some friendly aliens to the program, and their ship attacks Voyager. With everyone rattled, Tom and Tuvok grab phasers and order Seska to stand down. Seska has enough and activates the self-destruct sequence of the holographic Voyager, which, with the safety off, will kill Tuvok and Tom. Tuvok relents and hands Seska his phaser. Seska cancels the self-destruct, then she points the phaser at Tuvok like, "Haha, now I'm really gonna kill you for real, sucker!" And she pulls the trigger, and the phaser overloads, just like it did the hologram Janeway earlier, and Seska dies! Yay! The program is over! They won, I guess? Later, the senior staff are sharing a meal in the mess hall, and B'Elanna suggests that Tuvok and Tom should collaborate on another holo novel, even though they didn't really collaborate on this one. The Seska program took over before they actually made any changes, but whatever. Janeway suggests they write a western. B'Elanna requests a detective story. Chakotay just wants to not be the villain next time. Tuvok says, "If we write another one, we'll choose a subject not so close to home." Yeah, because this one really got under everyone's skin. You could tell. The end. Boy, if you were looking for an episode that epitomizes why Voyager was my least favorite Trek series for so many years, this one definitely fits the bill. Which is not to say Worst Case Scenario is a bad episode. It's not really, and that's the problem. See, Voyager isn't a bad series because all of the episodes are bad. It's a bad series because too many of the episodes are like this. Half-hearted mediocrities with a handful of clever moments and some potentially interesting themes that the episode makes no effort to explore. It's an okay episode containing the outline of the great episode that might have been made if anyone had cared to make it. Things get off to a somewhat promising start. The writing of the initial sequence where B'Elanna is playing the holo novel for the first time is terrific, dropping subtle clues that what we're seeing isn't a typical day aboard Voyager. Little details like Chakotay never referring to B'Elanna by name or saying things like, "You're a good officer, I wouldn't want you to get hurt," help to suggest that he doesn't see B'Elanna as B'Elanna. Which he doesn't. She's just the anonymous player character in this video game. Anyone who's ever played a game like this, and I'm a proud non-gamer, but even I've played a few games like this, knows how these sort of interactions go. And the episode really nails that vibe. It's kind of fun to watch an episode that's written like a video game from before seemingly everything actually was written like a video game. That first playthrough by B'Elanna takes a while, and I found my interest dropping off significantly once it became obvious that whatever this was, it wasn't really happening. Tom's playthrough is entertaining enough and much briefer, but once the focus of the story shifts away from the holo novel itself, its subject matter, and its impact on the crew, and toward Tom and Tuvok getting trapped by the Seska program, it becomes obvious that the episode isn't going anywhere interesting. The ingredients are present for a story that finally tries to do something with the concept of there being tension between the two factions of the crew, Starfleet and Maquis, Tuvok's holo novel reawakening resentments between the groups that everyone thought had been buried for good, Janeway worrying that maybe the former Maquis aboard aren't as satisfied with her leadership as she thought, Chakotay becoming concerned that Janeway doesn't trust him or that the Starfleet crew sees him as a potential threat. B'Elanna and Tom arguing over whether or not the holographic Chakotay's plan to prioritize finding a way home would be a good thing. There are numerous possible directions this story could have gone. Possibilities that are suggested by things we see in the episode. Possibilities that might have shown us something meaningful about these people and their relationships with each other. Instead, it becomes another stock holodeck episode with all the expected tropes, malfunctioning or otherwise out of control program, disabled safety protocols, no way to leave the holodeck, the only way out is to play through to the end. We've seen it before and better on both TNG and Deep Space Nine by this point. Worst case scenario not only reminds us of better holodeck episodes from other shows, it also reminds us of interesting aspects of Voyager's premise that have been ignored in favor of having the crew mostly get along with each other and not be affected by anything they experience. Tuvok explains that he created the Maquis mutiny scenario because he worried that might actually happen. But he dropped it because the tension between the Maquis and Starfleet crews evaporated pretty much immediately, and I'm watching the episode thinking, yeah, I remember that. It was the shits. Thanks for reminding me of that poor creative decision, which this episode does absolutely nothing to remedy. It references the short-lived tensions between the Starfleet and Maquis crew members. It prompts us to recall how Tuvok was a spy for Starfleet in Chakotay's crew. It brings back Seska. It's almost perverse how much this episode draws on past events in the series just to reiterate how much they absolutely do not matter. In the final scene, Tuvok promises that if he writes another holo novel, he'll make sure it doesn't hit so close to home, but did this one hit close to home? Nobody seemed to give a shit about the fact that it was about the Maquis crew doing a mutiny. Other than Chakotay's feeble, just don't make me the villain next time suggestion in that last conversation, none of the former Maquis seem remotely offended. Likewise, no one on the Starfleet crew is shown to be struggling with any mistrust of the Maquis suddenly brought to the surface by the holo novel. Tuvok even apologizes for creating the program in the first place, and Janeway tells him to lighten up. Close to home? Nobody cares, man. Nobody cares! Worst case scenario does boast some creative bits. Tuvok's double cross of Seska with the phaser rifle is well done and cleverly set up, with the same thing happening to the Janeway hologram earlier on, and the attempt to frame it as a creative exercise, with Tuvok and Tom getting trapped in the story they intended to write, and Janeway on the outside trying to write them out of trouble by adding things to the program, is at least a new and somewhat self-aware twist on the standard holodeck episode formula. It's not terrible. It's watchable. I like some of the character interactions, especially the argument between Tom and Tuvok over how to approach writing the ending to the holo novel, but mostly it's just kind of there. Stuff happens. None of it really seems to matter, even to the people it's happening to. It passes the time. In its unfulfilled promise and indifferent averageness, this is a typical Voyager episode. No message, no insight into these characters or the situation in which they find themselves. No point, really. It's not great. It's not terrible. It's perfectly acceptable Star Trek. From the show that cranked out more perfectly acceptable Star Trek than any other series in the franchise, because for whatever reason, the people who made it usually aimed low and we're happy if they even hit the target. Those are my thoughts on worst case scenario. What do you think of this episode? Please share your thoughts with me in the comments. If you'd like to support this channel, and I sure wish you would, if you can afford it, you can do so by becoming a patron at patreon.com/Steve Shives, becoming a channel member by clicking the join button, or by making a one-time gift by clicking the thanks button, or via PayPal or Venmo. Links are in the description. Please join me next time as I conclude this batch of holodeck episode reviews. Don't worry, there will be more to come next year, with a look at one more episode of Star Trek Voyager, a show from Voyager's 5th season, titled Bride of Chaotica. See you then. Thanks for watching, and take care, everybody.